It is impossible to know exactly what happened, but we can piece together some things in an intelligent and logical fashion.
People don't realize that there are potential killers among them. We'll be able to see, we can identify these dangerous people.
The scene had been staged in order to convey an impression.
How could anyone live in a society where people they liked, loved, lived with, worked with, and admired, the next day turn out to be the most demonic people imaginable?
Rockford, Illinois is located about an hour and a half from Chicago. Barbara Purcell worked as an occupational therapist at the Rockford Health System in Illinois. She was described by friends as strong, outgoing, and loved to laugh.
She was independent. She could be tough, too. She had always taken care of herself, but she was very caring. The people that she cared about, she would do anything for.
Barbara lived in Rockford with her husband, Willard Purcell. On May 31st, 2001, around 6:40 a.m., Barbara returned home early after working the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. night shift. According to Barbara, she parked her car in the garage, then walked into the kitchen from the garage when suddenly Willard jumped out from behind the door. Willard knocked her to the floor, then hit Barbara's neck and arm with a stun gun. As he attacked her, he asked her why she had a cell phone but wouldn't answer his calls. Barbara was able to get up and run to her car as Willard asked her to come back and talk to him. Barbara drove back to work and told her coworkers about the attack. After being calmed down by her colleagues, Barbara reported the attack to police at 12:23 p.m. Police took photos of Barbara's neck, which had red marks that resembled a rash. Deputy Perry claims Barbara told him that Willard correctly suspected she was having an extramarital affair, but this was not confirmed by anyone else. At 2:25 p.m., Barbara visited the doctor, where she was described as being hysterical, crying, and very upset. She told the doctor that she bought her cell phone to stay in contact with her son, who was getting married in Oklahoma, but that Willard thought she was using it to talk to someone else she was having an affair with. She also mentioned that Willard had never been violent towards her before this incident. That afternoon, Willard was arrested at their family home. He was charged with domestic battery and unlawful use of a weapon, although a stun gun was not found at the home. A temporary protective order was issued to Willard, ordering him to stay away from Barbara and her residence for 2 weeks. The next day, on June 1st, 2001, Willard was no longer permitted to live with Barbara, so she continued to live in the family home while Willard left to stay with his brother. In recent weeks, the couple were fighting about possible infidelity in the marriage. Willard had a work phone and would go outside to use it when he received calls at home. Barbara soon accused Willard of cheating on her, but she never could confirm that. When Barbara decided to buy a cell phone, Willard started accusing her of seeing other people behind his back. There was no evidence that Barbara was seeing anyone else. 5 days later, on June 6, 2001, Barbara was scheduled to work 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., but didn't show up for her shift. Her coworkers said she was not answering her phone, so they decided to contact police to conduct a welfare check. Police sent a patrol car to check on Barbara. When they arrived, they tried knocking on the front door, but no one was answering, and the door was locked. The police walked to the rear of the residence and observed the back door ajar with the window pane near the doorknob broken. The back door consisted of 2 doors, the exterior door with a glass door within a wooden frame, while the interior door was a wooden door with glass panes in the top half. Police looked through the window of the door and saw what looked like a leg on the stairs. When they entered the residence, they saw Barbara at the bottom of the stairs. She was laying on her stomach on the stairs with her head pointed to the bottom and her feet to the top. Police could tell that an attack had taken place from the blood spatter on the walls. A large amount of blood was found on the stairs, while a small amount was found in the kitchen. Barbara was pronounced dead at the scene. She was 42 years old. To investigators, the scene looked like Barbara had stumbled upon a robbery in progress, or that someone had broken into her home then waited for her to return. Her clothing were positioned in a way that made it seem the motive for the crime was sexual in nature. A rape test was conducted, which was negative, suggesting the killer staged her clothing to look like she had been assaulted. Evidence at the scene suggested a struggle started at the top of the stairs and continued down the stairs. The blood spatter on the wall of the staircase indicated there were at least 3 strikes to Barbara's head during the struggle. The blood pattern on the wall had tails on the blood drops, consistent with cast-off spatter from blood being flung off an object. Blood spatter experts concluded Barbara's head was bent down the first time she was struck on the head. Then she was struck 2 to 3 times as she fell down the stairs. All the windows were locked. The crime scene video shows the back door wide open. Investigators noticed that most of the glass from the broken interior back door window pane was gathered between the 2 doors, indicating the window pane had been broken from the inside. The exterior door, made of glass, was not broken. It is uncertain if the door was captured on film as it was before or filmed after the first responders entered the residence. It's important that video and photographs taken at any crime scene are documented as soon as possible to the time of discovery and match how the scene was found. The date and time should be visible on the screen for investigators to document and establish a timeline of when evidence was gathered. This helps when reviewing evidence. Each room of the house was disheveled, with items from drawers thrown all over the place. Barbara's cleaning lady told police she had last been at the house during the day on June 1st, 2001. She said she used the keypad outside of the garage door to enter the home and that the code had not changed since she started working for the Purcells. The cleaning lady indicated to police that a number of items were missing from the home, including jewelry and a number of coin collections. Barbara was also missing her wedding ring, which she had still been wearing days before her death. Fresh tire impressions were found outside of the home that started on the gravel in the driveway and continued through a grassy field behind her house, where the vehicles seemed to be able to sit out of view. Castor plasts were made of the tire impression. Sniffing dogs tried to pick up a scent in the field, but found nothing. A search of police databases showed there were no sex offenders living in the area. But when they checked for similar robberies in the area, they found that on January 10th, 1994, 7 years before her death, Barbara's house had been robbed by forced entry, at which time guns were reported stolen. Barbara's phone records for the afternoon showed she received 3 short calls on the afternoon of her death. The calls were made at 5:27, 5:29, and 5:30 p.m. Investigators found the number belonged to a man named Willie Brown. When police asked him about the calls, Willie at first denied making the phone calls, but after police showed him the phone records, Willie indicated he had made the calls in response to a classified ad that just happened to be 1 number away from matching Barbara's phone number. The police were able to confirm his claim. The only person with a key to the house besides Barbara was Willard. Police confirmed that the key in Willard's possession fit one of the locks to the residence. Police seized Willard's truck and compared the tires to the tracks found at the scene. They determined the tires were the same brand, but small imperfections or accidental characteristics that make prints unique were not visible on the tracks taken from the scene to make an exact match. The medical examiner concluded that the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. They determined Barbara suffered a basal skull fracture and believed the weapon could have been a flashlight. Barbara was hit 2 to 4 times and had defense wounds on the back of her hands, which indicated she tried to block the second blow by putting her hands up behind her head while being struck from behind. The ME indicated defense wounds are usually found on the palms of victims who are facing their killer. Photos also showed injuries to Barbara's face. Photographs of the wounds found on Barbara's hand were sent to the odontologist, who determined the wound resembled bite marks. Based on the bruising around the wound, it was determined that Barbara was bitten around the time of her death. The pathologist determined Barbara had been dead since the night before by the degree of rigor mortis. Even though fly eggs were present in the blood found at the scene and on her body, the pathologist was unable to determine the exact time of death, but was able to say she had died the day before her body was found. The toxicology report determined Barbara had no alcohol or illegal drugs in her system at the time of death. Other injuries on her body included bruises on her legs, hip, arms, and fresh scratches on her right knee. She had fresh cuts on her right hand and a linear blood blister, likely from a hard pinch on her right index finger. The small bones at the top of 2 fingers were crushed. A C-shaped abrasion on Barbara's hand had likely come from being bitten on her hand during the struggle, or her hand striking the attacker's teeth. She was likely unconscious for several minutes before dying. Further investigation into Barbara's death led investigators to ask people who knew Barbara about her life around the time of her death. Friends indicated that she confided in them that things were not going well with her and Willard, and that they had not been sleeping in the same room. Investigators discovered that Barbara had contacted police just a few days before her death to report her suspicions of the possibility that Willard had been responsible for the death of his first wife, Crystal. Willard's first wife, Crystal Purcell, was born on April 28, 1947, and died on July 27, 1987, at the age of 40. On the day of her death, Crystal was found at the bottom of the stairs in the house she shared with Willard. Coroners at the time ruled her death accidental. Barbara was found dead in her home at the bottom of the stairs leading to the basement just 5 days after she separated from Willard. Investigators working on Barbara's case asked to have Crystal's body exhumed to conduct a new autopsy. The medical examiner found a 6-centimeter long cut on the back of Crystal's head. Her skull had been fractured, yet they concluded the injuries were consistent with a fall down the stairs. With that, investigators were unable to find solid evidence indicating Willard was responsible for Crystal's death. Willard's alibi for the day of Barbara's death was that he was at work all day at the Mitsubishi lithographic presses located about an hour and 15 minutes from Rockford. He said he left work around 3 p.m. and went straight to his brother's house where he stayed all night. On the morning of June 5, 2001, a female neighbor of Barbara's who lived 2 doors down woke up for work at 3:15 a.m. She said she was out walking her dogs at 4 a.m. when she noticed a truck parked in the field behind Barbara's house that she said looked similar to Willard's truck. She said a man was standing behind the parked truck who she exchanged good mornings with, but was unable to identify the male as being Willard because of it being dark outside. The neighbor returned to her house to get ready to leave for work. When she left 10 to 15 minutes later, she noticed the truck was no longer parked in the field. She also noticed that Barbara's outdoor lights were on, which she found unusual for that time of morning. This neighbor also told investigators that when she left for work the next morning on June 6, 2001, she noticed that the lights were on inside of Barbara's house, which she found more unusual. A 73-year-old neighbor of Barbara's told police that on June 1, 2001, the day after the protective order was given, he saw Willard's truck parked on his property behind one of his buildings. The neighbor walked to Barbara's property and noticed the back door leading to the basement was partially opened. He called Willard's name but received no response. He said he then walked back to his own property and Willard walked up behind him. He said to Willard, "Damn it, Will, what in the hell are you doing over here? You know you don't belong over here." Willard responded, "I got what I came for, carton of cigarettes." The neighbor then told investigators that on the same afternoon or the next day, on the afternoon of June 2nd, 2001, Willard asked to borrow the neighbor's vehicle to follow Barbara home from work without being detected. He said Willard told him he wanted to make sure she was going straight home after work and wasn't seeing anyone else. Willard's alibi for the day of Barbara's death fell through when a coworker indicated Willard left work at 12:30 p.m. on June 5, 2001, complaining of a headache and not feeling well. Phone records indicated Willard had made phone calls in the Rockford area on the day of Barbara's death. A staff member at a family-owned restaurant in Rockford reported to police that they remembered seeing Willard coming in for food between 1 and 3 p.m. on June 5, 2001. The staff member indicated they remembered him because he was acting bizarre. He ordered a hot dog, had taken a bite, then thrown it in the garbage. When the staff asked if the food was all right, he said it was fine and left. Police spoke with the 73-year-old neighbor of Barbara's on June 6, 2001, a few hours after her body was discovered. The neighbor indicated that Barbara's house had motion detector lights on the outside. He told them that Willard had complained to him in the past many times about his marriage and that he was trying to keep his marriage together. While talking to police, the neighbor received a phone call from Willard. It's unknown what the conversation was about. The same day at 2:39 p.m., police stopped Willard in his truck. When police approached the vehicle, Willard asked, "What did that bitch say now?" While being patted down, Willard asked, "What did my wife do to me this time?" Willard was arrested for violating the order of protection. He was read the Miranda warning and agreed to speak with police. Willard gave his account of what happened. He said that after receiving the order of protection and being released on bond on June 1, 2001, he and his brother went to Barbara's house to retrieve his truck. He said over the next 2 days, he might have drove past Barbara's house once or twice to see if the lawn needed mowing. He said on June 4, 2001, at 11 a.m., he drove to the residence of Barbara's 73-year-old neighbor's house and parked in the driveway. He then walked to Barbara's house and retrieved some tools and some of her jewelry. Willard admitted to borrowing the same 73-year-old neighbor's car to follow Barbara to work. He said he then returned to his brother's house where he remained for the rest of the day. On June 5, 2001, he left his brother's at 3:30 a.m. At first, he said he drove to a work site where he worked until 3:30 or 4 p.m. Later, though, he changed his story when the female neighbor of Barbara's reported seeing Willard's truck parked in the field behind Barbara's house that morning at 4 a.m. He didn't give an explanation as to why he was there at that time. He said after work that day, he went to his brother's house at 5:30 p.m. and didn't say what he did that evening. While at the police station, Willard was informed Barbara had been found dead at the bottom of the basement stairs in their home. He didn't ask any questions, didn't appear angry or upset. He just denied any involvement. A search of Willard's truck turned up a black plastic bag containing the missing jewelry and coins from Barbara's house, her wedding ring, and a number of clothing articles belonging to Willard. He claimed Barbara had packed the bag for him when he moved out days earlier, and that she wanted Willard to have the items. A flashlight found on the coffee table in the living room was collected as evidence. A second flashlight was collected from the glove compartment of Willard's truck. A search of Willard's home computer turned up a hidden life insurance policy he had on Barbara issued by her employer, naming Willard as 80% beneficiary if Barbara died accidentally. Police later conducted a second interview with Willard, at which point he stated Barbara's death was an accident. Investigators believe Willard's motive for killing Barbara was that he didn't want to go through a divorce and split his possessions with her. At trial, Willard testified on his own behalf. He denied killing Barbara and furthermore claimed that she had lied to police about him attacking her with a stun gun on the morning of May 31, 2001. He explained that his 12-year-long relationship with his wife started to deteriorate in November 2000. He said on May 31, 2001, he woke up between 3:30 or 4 a.m. and began to work on the sunroom in the backyard of the house. At this point, he was still living with Barbara in the family home. At about 6:30 a.m., Willard went into the house for coffee and startled Barbara. He claimed she was so startled that she fell on the ground, dropping her purse. When a cell phone fell out of her purse, Willard asked her why she had it, to which Barbara replied, "None of your business." He said she wouldn't let him help her up to her feet, that she got up and walked to her car, then left. He said several hours later he went to buy cigarettes. When he returned, police were in the driveway of the house where they proceeded to arrest him for attacking Barbara with a stun gun. He claims the police did not find a stun gun at the house. Willard then talks about the day of June 4th, 2001. He says he had a conversation with the 73-year-old neighbor outside of Barbara's residence. Willard said the neighbor warned him that he wasn't supposed to be around the home. Willard told the court that he was at the residence to retrieve tools and cigarettes from the sunroom in the backyard. He then claims it was the neighbor's idea for Willard to take his car, which he said he only drove for about 25 minutes, during which time he didn't follow Barbara. Willard then starts to talk about the events surrounding the day of Barbara's death, June 5th, 2001. He started off the day with him leaving work around 1 p.m., at which point he returned to Rockford. At about 2 or 3 p.m., he said he went to Barbara's workplace, where he left a note under the windshield of her car asking her to talk to him. He said he then bought a hanging basket of flowers and drove to the 73-year-old neighbor's house when he noticed what appeared to be a police car parked in Barbara's driveway. At that point, he parked in the field near the home until the police car left. Then he parked in the neighbor's driveway. He said he went to look for the neighbor at Barbara's house, taking the basket of flowers with him. Once at the house, he hung the flowers, then went into the house to see if Barbara was home. He said when Barbara arrived home, she told him he shouldn't be there, but that she let him inside anyway. He claims the two sat in the living room discussing the order of protection from the May 31st, 2001 incident. Willard accused Barbara of fabricating the stun gun attack, to which he claims Barbara responded, "Well, I got you out of the house." He says she didn't mention anything about divorce, but that she wanted him away from the house for a while. Willard said she ranted about his presence and they both got upset. Willard went to the kitchen for water, and when he returned to the living room, he claims Barbara popped him in the mouth and started hitting him with a flashlight. Willard said the two fought for the flashlight and edged towards the basement stairs. He said Barbara struck him with the flashlight in the mouth repeatedly until he grabbed it and struck her 2 to 3 times at the very most. Willard explained that the reason he hit her with the flashlight was to defend himself from Barbara hitting and kicking him. He claimed that Barbara tripped on a rug or shoes that were laying at the top of the stairs, falling head first down the stairs. He said he didn't see any blood, but that Barbara wasn't moving. He then called out her name, to which she told him to leave because she intended to call the police. He said he took the overnight bag that Barbara had packed for him earlier and went to his brother's house. This was the bag that the police later found in his truck with Barbara's belongings. He said he believed Barbara was alive when he left the house because she was talking when he left. He said he didn't call for help because he was in fear of violating the order of protection. The medical examiner testified that it was impossible for Barbara to survive the head injuries she sustained during the attack, let alone be able to talk. The court heard testimony from people who knew Willard while he was married to his first wife, Crystal. They indicated the relationship was violent, that Willard would beat Crystal during their marriage. 2 of Barbara's co-workers testified that on the day of June 5, 2001, they did not notice any marks on her hands, meaning the cuts happened close to her time of death. Barbara's 73-year-old neighbor gave his testimony on August 22, 2001 at the pre-trial. He died in May 2003, before the trial was set to start. After some debate between the defense and prosecutors, his testimony about his interactions with Willard around the time of Barbara's death was allowed to be used at trial. His testimony consisted of the same information he told police the day of Barbara's death regarding his interactions with Willard. Prosecutors theorized that on the afternoon of June 5, 2001, Willard drove to Barbara's house, where he hid his truck in the field behind the house. He then used his key to enter the residence and waited for Barbara to return from work. When Barbara returned from her 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift, she parked in the driveway of the residence, a precaution she had taken after being attacked by Willard in her garage. She then walked into the house through the front door. When she walked past the stairway leading to the basement, she was surprised by Willard, who started to attack her. Barbara fought back as Willard hit her on the head with what was believed to be a flashlight while pushing her down the stairs. Barbara threw her hands back in Willard's direction behind her head and managed to hit him in the face, leaving the teeth marks in the back of her hand. After arranging Barbara's clothing to make it look like a sexual assault had occurred, He ransacked the house and put Barbara's items into a black plastic bag, later found in his possession. At some point, Willard was believed to have washed his hands in the kitchen sink where a small amount of blood was found. Before leaving the crime scene, Willard broke the back door from the inside, then opened the door to make it look like an intruder had entered. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The jury deliberated for 10.5 hours. Willard was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. The jury indicated the blood spatter analysis and teeth impressions were important factors in their decision. Since his sentencing, Willard has submitted a number of appeals, one of which was reviewed on March 31, 2006. The appellate court concluded that a combination of Willard's testimony, along with photo and forensic evidence, overwhelmingly established his guilt. On March 21, 2013, he filed another appeal. This time, he was granted time served for the time he spent in jail before the trial began, which was a total of 815 days. The appellate court indicated that the time granted was mandatory and that it was basically meaningless on a life sentence. Willard is incarcerated at the Menard Correctional Center in Southern Illinois. He is 72 years old.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Here's what's making news.
Murder for hire. Murder for hire.
Murder for hire.
Murder for hire.
Murder for hire.
Murder for hire.
Murder for hire.
Murder for hire.
Murder for hire.
Murder for hire.
We start with one mother who found out she had a price on her head. And you won't believe who tried to take out the head.
It started as a joke, and it got out of hand. It's cost him everything, and everything changed in the matter of a few hours.
When an FBI agent stops by to deliver to owner Dana Campbell an unthinkable message.
He asked to speak to me out in private, and he said, I hate to be the one to inform you of this, but we've been notified that there has been a contract put out on your life.
A contract out on your life? It just sounds, it sounds insane.
The FBI agent says he has a pretty good idea of who took out the hit. It was her own son, Matthew. The big question, why? Matthew's family thinks he wanted something more, his mother's money.
My two girls think now maybe if my estate had been divided into thirds after I passed away, maybe he might have even considered, killing them so he could have 100% of it all.
Nikki says she thought their family had an unbreakable bond. They enjoyed family trips together and only bickered the way that normal brothers and sisters do.
We picked on each other, and we picked on my little sister a lot, but at the end of the day, we knew, that we had each other. They have enough evidence that they are safe in saying that it was my brother who had done that. He had contacted an undercover FBI agent and was making plans to have him kill my mom. Made me question everything that I ever knew about him. Was I next? Was my sister next? Somebody felt that my brother was seriously contemplating doing this. That person went to the Department of Corrections and basically told on my brother, say, hey, Matthew Campbell wants to, hire somebody to kill his mother.
That's all it took. An undercover FBI agent posing as a hitman approached Matthew. He fell for it, was busted, and then sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. On the outside, Dana and her daughters struggle to understand how this could have happened. Matthew tries to explain in letters home.
This all blew up in my face, and I can't handle it. I need to start living differently, like you have been telling me all along. I finally see where my lifestyle has gotten me, and I have been saved in the name of Jesus Christ. All of this is cold hard truth, and you don't have to believe it, but I hope you believe your son. I hope you will somehow talk to me and maybe forgive me someday.
Over the last 4 years, letters like this kept coming, and with them, finally, a measure of forgiveness. The family now believes that Matthew never really intended to kill his mother, and they are waiting for him to come home from prison next month.
He wants to move on and put everything past him, and we do too. I think, yeah, we're gonna flourish into probably one of the best relationships I think I've ever had.
Well, that's going to do it for all of us here.
Thanks for listening and helping us give voices to the victims who can't. For the latest episodes, subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Instagram. Feel free to email at stagedcrimescenespodcast@gmail.com.